There's an old story, I think it was told by Freud when it was originally written. It's about a Russian guy who's in a train and the only seat is next to an old Jewish man. And he sits down and the Jewish guy is muttering, "Oi, am I thirsty? Oi, am I thirsty?" And this goes on continually, and the guy is just getting totally frustrated. But there's no other seats in the train. He can't move, and this guy just keeps going, "Oi, am I thirsty?" So finally, at one of the stops, he gets up, he buys a bottle of water, and he gives it to the guy. The guy drinks it, doesn't thank him or anything. But at least he's quiet for a while, train keeps going. And then finally the Jewish guy says, "Oi, was I thirsty?" And that keeps going for the rest of the trip. Well, what Freud discovered is that the ego itself is structured as a complaint. And there's nothing it enjoys more than to complain. And if it can't find anything in the present to complain about, it'll complain about the past complaints and miss them. It'll be nostalgic about its past complaints. And if that doesn't work, it'll come up with future complaints to worry about. "Oh, yeah, I know I'm going to be thirsty." And this is what became labeled as hysteria. But it's basically the way most egos operate. But then as Freud's psychoanalytic theorizing and observations and practice went on, he found that there were fragments that were not identified with complaint, but with rejection. And so they rejected his way of getting beyond complaint. They were not interested in learning to stop complaining because they enjoyed their complaints too much. And so eventually they just started complaining about Freud. And he found out that psychoanalysis at best is just another symptom that will be used by the ego to justify its ongoing complaints. And one becomes recruited into playing the part of the object that causes the complaint, or that needs to be rejected, or whose law needs to be transgressed. And it is this structure of the ego to always remain in dissatisfaction and to write songs about it. Because when you think about it, that's really what most popular music is about. And it's a dissatisfaction that complains about whatever it is not getting, or whatever it is getting that isn't actually what it wanted or who it wanted. And why aren't you acting the way that I thought you would? And all of these frustrations that become turned into modes of behavior and of thought that get fossilized. And the ego cannot get beyond it because of its enjoyment of its complaint, which ultimately becomes a complaint about itself. Why can't I give up complaining? Oi, I complain all the time. And it can't get beyond that because its fear is that if it doesn't complain, it doesn't exist. I complain, therefore I am. This is the modern Cartesian formula to ensure that the ego remains in its discomfort zone. And so really the point of meditation is to just try for 45 minutes a day to stop complaining. And what you discover, if you're actually willing to stop complaining, even for half that time, is that just by stopping your complaints, you're in bliss. That's all it took. It didn't take anything more than that, because when you stop complaining thoroughly, you don't exist. And there's no one left to suffer. There's no object to complain about, and no subject to make the complaint, and no other to complain to. And that the yogis have called Satchidananda. Now, what is discovered in that moment of silence, when there's no other to complain to, and there's no ego making the complaint, and there's no object of the complaint, is that the silent awareness, now minus complaint, and minus language, and minus duality, minus identification, is our natural state. This is the underlying reality always that is obscured by the complaining. And simply by letting it go, we recognize that this peace that we are seeking and complaining about not having is what we are. And that this peace, when we allow it to be sustained without interrupting it with a complaint, is the eternal, blissful, transcendent, intelligent awareness that we can turn into a belief is God or is the ultimate self. But without turning it into that belief, because then you'll complain about being separate from that, and you'll be complaining to God of, why did you make me separate from you, and be stuck in my complaints, is the recognition that one must take complete responsibility for the annihilation of the complaining ego, rather than complaining to God for having created you as a complainer. And when there is complete responsibility taken, so that there is no one to complain to and nothing to complain about and no excuses to continue complaining, you realize what is called liberation. And once you have the imperience of consciousness having extracted itself from language and thus from complaints and suffering, and thus from ego and from otherness, this is the real self. And there, from this position, is no more motivation to fall back into the complaining, neurotic ego consciousness. And when that tendency, that habit of enjoying complaining more than you enjoy your bliss has been extinguished, then magically, whatever had been complained about will tend to disappear from one's life horizons. And the miraculous nature that life spontaneously redreams its own conditions from its highest capacity to sustain itself in peace and in bliss, in love, in joy, in intelligent awareness, produces a world, which is a dream field, that reflects that state. If your consciousness is structured as a complaint, you will have infinite things to complain about. If it is structured as a peaceful presence, there will be only that which brings you peace and joy and the continuation of that ongoing eternal bliss that you are. And so you have entire and complete control of your destiny through that decision to turn jouissance into ananda. Oi, why did I wait so long to make that choice? You can fall into that, or you can be free here and now. It's up to you. Namaste.
Namaste.